Wow, this is a bit exciting, getting to introduce two clients on the same day. So we've got Jason Cunningham, who is going to be the guest speaker now for the next 30 minutes. Jason is a rubbish cook. Sorry about that, Jace. Thankfully, he's one of the country's premier finance experts and is about to share his recipe for property success. Jason is a media darling. I've not called you a darling before.
Call me a rubbish cook just then.
Jason, I'm going to make it up with darling. Jason is a media darling, being a regular contributor on Channel 10's The Living Room and SEN The Run Home. He's the co-founder of financial services firm The Practice and is a CPA and a qualified financial planner. He's the author of financial self-help book called Where's My Money, and is working on his follow-up business book, Have Your Cake and Sell It Too. Most importantly for you, he's an energetic and entertaining keynote speaker. His true passion is helping Australians master money so they can fuel their family's future. Put your hands together, please, for Jason Cunningham.
Thanks, Carly. Good morning, everyone. Firstly, a big congratulations to you, John. Well done, pal. What a great celebration it is at your book launch, and you've done a great effort, mate. I've read your book and I think it's outstanding, so congratulations. Secondly, thanks to everybody for having me. Yeah, well done. Let's give John a round of applause, huh? So I have the privilege today to talk to you just for half an hour while you're having some breakfast, and I'll talk to you about a few things, predominantly around property investing. I'm going to also spend a good 28 minutes of the half an hour talking about myself. No, I'm only joking. So if it's okay with you, as young Kylie Bartlett said, you like that, young? Yeah. So Kylie and I met each other in rehab. She's got a slight drinking problem and a little bit of a drug affliction. No, only joking. As Kylie mentioned, I'm a CPA. So like a lot of us here, I'm an accountant. But I'm also, CPA stands for two things, Certified Practicing Accountant, but also Car Parking Attendant. And if it's okay with you guys, I know a lot of us accountants, Renee, you're one of them, we sometimes get labelled with the wrong type of branding. We're a little bit boring and we like to talk about BAS statements and GST and all that debits and credits. I'm going to have a little bit of fun if that's okay with you guys. Is that all right if we have a little bit of fun for the morning? Or would you prefer me to talk about how to fill out a BAS statement and talk about your balance sheet, profit and loss statement, contingent liabilities, all that sort of stuff? So, look, we'll have a bit of fun along the way, but hopefully I can give you a little bit of advice. But, you know, I'm sure that there's a few that know your stuff. So my story is this. As I mentioned, I'm an accountant. 18 years ago, my business partner, Rob Haddad, and I started our firm, The Practice. Robbie and I have known each other ever since we were 5. We went to primary school, high school, and then university together. Nice and incestuous there. Once we left uni, I went and worked at Ford Motor Company and worked at Ford for nearly 5 years, and Rob worked for an accounting firm in town. We came together and we started our firm, The Practice. And I remember the first days and the early days of going into business, and those of us that have gone into business, you think back to the early days. We were two young guys. We were 24, 25 years old. We had no clients, we had no idea, we were making no money. And we were teaching other people on how to make money. I remember signing our first lease, a 2-year lease, $8,500 a year, and I thought, oh my God, I've just signed a personal guarantee for $17,000. We bought a couple of computers, a server, we had an office each, we dug a hole in the wall, we joined our computers together, and hey, we were networked, you know? And, excuse me, my first business coach spoke to me about the importance of being on purpose. Being on purpose not only in your personal life, but being on purpose in your business life. And so we developed our first mission statement and our first business plan when we went on our first business planning trip. So in the first year of business, we turned over $60,000 and we each made $100 each a month. And we were excited because we were business owners. We had our suits on, and like most Melburnians, we flew north for the summer and we went to Port Douglas. Hey? We had $1,200 each in our hands and off we go to our business planning trip. And we wrote our first business plan and our mission statement, and that was to help our clients achieve both their business and personal goals through proactive service and ongoing advice. And that mission statement has stayed true to us to today. You fast forward 18 years, now we have 50 team members in our organisation. So we've gone from 2 lunatics to 50 of us. We turn over about 10 mil now. And hopefully we're making a bit more than $100 a month. But along the journey, I got into this public speaking thing and I wrote a book. My first book I wrote a few years ago called Young Russian Brides. It's an internet dating... No, I'm only joking. Just checking if we're awake. I wrote a book called Where's My Money? 10 Surefire Ways to Keep, Grow and Earn More Cash. From there, I managed to get a gig on radio. A friend of mine, a client of mine, works on afternoon radio on a radio station called SEN. It's a sports radio station, and he works on a show called The Run Home, and he got me to do a little bit of a money segment every Tuesday just in the off-season when footy wasn't on. Well, fortunately for me, that turned out all right. I've been on that radio program for 6.5 years. Do we have any SEN listeners in the audience? Just a few of us that love our footy and sport and stuff? So yeah, I work on SEN, which has been amazing for us and for me and for my business. And then a few years after that, I got introduced to a guy at Channel 10, and he said, gee, you're not really a typical accountant. And I got a gig on TV working on a show called The Living Room. The Living Room's a lifestyle entertainment show on Friday nights, 7:30 till 8:30, and I do a money segment sort of once a month, 10 to 12 shows a year. So that's a little bit of fun. And as Kylie said, I'm just finishing off my second book, Have Your Cake and Sell It Too. These are some of the companies that I've worked for along the journey. As you can see, Ford Motor Company's up there. Unfortunately and sadly for Ford, next Wednesday marks the last Falcon that's ever going to roll off the line. It's a sad day for me. As I mentioned, I spent about 4.5 years there at Ford Motor Company, and I think it's really sad that it's going to be the end of automotive manufacturing in Australia. So it's a sad time. It's a shame the government didn't do more about it. I'm a bit frustrated. I worked on the Button car plan and a few other things. But, you know, it goes to show us that the world's changing, yeah? And we're becoming very much a global economy, and if we're not evolving, we're dissolving. What I want to talk about today is really more around my experience as opposed to opinion. And over the last 18 years of advising people and building my own personal investment property portfolio, I'm going to talk to you about experience as opposed to opinion. I often tell people to be wary of whose opinion you listen to. Rather, what I'm going to talk to you about is my personal experience. Some of you may agree with it, some of you may not, and there's a lot of accountants in the room that potentially are a bit smarter than I am, but I just want to share with you my story. So the first question I ask is, why do we invest in property? That's not is this a live audience? It's not a rhetorical question. Does anyone want to help me give me a chop out? Why would we invest in property? To make money. Thank you, sir. Anyone else? No one else buys property? A lot of people say to me, Jason, it's a stable, sturdy investment. Bricks and mortar is something that I know and I understand. I don't really know too much about the share market, but I do know at least in the next 50, 60, 70 years, people are still going to be living in houses or units. We can get a good return on our investment, a good yield, which is called rent. Arguably, the property is going to go up in value. These are some of the reasons people invest in property, yeah? But what's the elephant in the room? For mine, it's how much is enough. How many investment properties should we have? 1, 2, 7, 11, 55? I don't know. How many investment properties should we get? The question is, and the challenge we face in this country is too often we want to be like the bloke next door. We want to live up to the Joneses. We want to do what someone else does. I believe that one of the keys when it comes to investing in property, and the keys to your personal wealth creation strategy, is what suits you and your family, as opposed to what Renee's doing, or what Kylie's doing, or what John's doing. It's really important to determine what's right for you and your family. The last thing you want to do is be like the next bloke, because that's when we come unstuck, is when we try to copy someone else's investment plan or someone else's investment strategy. And we do what someone else does. You know, in our country, people like to tell us about all the good things that they've done. They don't share with us the bad things. You know what I mean? And so too often we're following down a path that potentially is not the right path. So what are the 7 key ingredients in my mind's eye that help us have a successful investment strategy when it comes to property? The first, I believe, like anything, the first, I believe, is to get your mindset right. Have the appropriate mindset. When it comes to being successful, whether it be investing, running a business, relationships, playing sport, team sport, individual sport, anything, 80 to 90% of it's got to do with the 6 inches between our ears. Getting our mindset right. Secondly, with property, and we've seen this, and John alluded to it earlier, with the GFC that we all went through, we've got to be in a position where we're creating surplus cash flow. Negative cash flow can, in actual fact, choke us. And too often, you hear a lot of ads on radio, or you hear a lot of people saying, hey, listen, have I got a deal for you? It's only $55 a week after tax and all these other benefits, and let's just negatively gear our life out of ourselves. I believe that positive cash flow is mission critical. Because if you ask me, one of the main reasons why we invest in property is to generate passive income as opposed to personal exertion income. Passive income is income that's derived without me having to do anything. But if the property is negative in its cash flow, that's not passive income. That means I still have to work to fund the liability, or the associated liability being the loan. Number 3, focus on reducing our debt as part of your overall strategy. Too much debt will choke us out of the market. Just ask any of the pigs, Portugal, Italy, Ireland, Greece, Spain, these guys, US government. Too much debt will cripple us. Number 4, work out the appropriate way to finance and get the deposit for that property. I'm going to talk a little bit about that because there's a few entertaining and exciting ways we can do that. Number 5, as an accountant, it would be remiss of me not to talk about this, but maximise your tax effectiveness. I remember when I first started in business, we used to talk to our clients about tax minimisation strategies. We don't necessarily talk about that anymore due to Part 4A and a few other little things, but really this point here is maximising your tax effectiveness. When it comes to investing, tax should be the last reason that we should look at. Should be the last. We should look at an asset that's going to increase in value, an asset that's going to give us a great yield, return on our investment, and thirdly, the tax benefits associated. If we just focus on tax, that doesn't make sense. The most tax anyone pays in this room is 49 cents in every dollar. And if your predominant focus is to reduce your tax, I can help you with that. You see, as an accountant, I can give you a bill. And that's tax deductible. So it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for you to give me 10 grand for me to give you 5 grand back. If you want that, I promise you, I'm right. I can help you. I can really help you. I've got an FPOS machine, but you can see that doesn't make sense. Sure, taking advantage of the tax system, that does make sense, but as your predominant reason for any investment, reducing your tax, that's bananas in pyjamas coming down the stairs. Next, structures and how we should structure our investments. I'll talk a bit more about this because structure's something that's really close to my heart, particularly from an asset protection perspective. Unfortunately, John, without taking anything away from you, but whether we like it or not, we're becoming more and more like the United States every day. And what I mean by that is that it's not my fault, it's your fault. Someone's trying to sue me, particularly in the professional services industry and some of the other industries out there. I think it's really hard to build up our assets, let alone someone have them take it off me. So therefore, I'm a big proponent of segregating my business assets from my personal assets and from my investment assets. And finally, have a strategy, have a plan, as Johnny alluded to earlier. So mindset, what do I mean by mindset? Mindset for mine is getting your head right. But in particular, I pinch a bit from a guy called Stephen Covey who wrote a book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Has anyone read that book? A lot of us have heard of that book. This is one, for me, this has had a big influence in my life. I'm not a big reader. It sort of bores me. I look for the pictures and shit like that. But so what I do is I'm an audio book sort of guy. So when I go for a walk, I go for a couple of walks a week, put in the earphones and I listen to 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. One of the most effective habits that he talks about is starting with the end in mind. So for mine, when it comes to developing an investment strategy, I say, what's the end game? What is it that we're trying to achieve? I used to do this when I played football. I played footy for a long time. I finished when I was 35. I know what you're saying. I look 28, but no. What's makeup and on TV and that? They film it from a long way away. They put Vaseline on the lens. You look a bit younger. But one of the things I used to play on the ball, and my coach used to say, Jay, what's the objective? What's the end goal? I said, well, I'd love to get 40 possessions a game, He goes, well, you're kidding yourself, but that's a good place to start. And he used to then say, well, how many contests will you win? Will you win one every contest you go to? Will you win every contest? I said, no. He goes, would you win 1 in 2 or 1 in 3? I said, oh, look, every contest that I go, I'll probably win 1, my opponent will win 1, and the third one might end up in a disputed ball or a bounce. He goes, so you've got to get to 30 contests every quarter so that you can get 10 positions. So I use the same analogy when it comes to my investment philosophy. What is it that I'm trying to achieve? When do I want to retire, and how much income do I want to retire on? And what will my asset base need to look like? And once I work out that, and then I'm going to diversify my asset base, because I don't believe in putting all my eggs in one basket. I want to have some in property, some in shares, and some in other investment assets. And then I work backwards from that. Because that then gives us the idea of how much, when is enough. So start with the end in mind. Number 2, cash flow. Positive cash flow for mine is really important. Now, one of the benefits that we have at the moment, and remember, we can only provide advice on current economic circumstances, but one of the things at the moment is the cost of money is pretty cheap, yeah? I know it's pretty cheap compared to when I was in Year 12. I was in Year 12 in 1990, and my parents' home loan was 18%. My home loan is 4%, you know? So the access to money, the cost of money is pretty cheap, and access to money is pretty good as well. But don't get sucked in just because the loan's going to be cheap, and the loan's cheap today. Who knows what it's going to be tomorrow, or in 5 years, or in 10 years' time. So it's important that you develop a strategy that's right for you now, but also right for you in the longer term. Now, I'm okay. I'm not saying that every property we should buy should be positively geared from day one. I don't think that's always achievable. But as long as we've got a focus and an objective to get to that positive cash flow perspective, I think that's important. Because remember, if your goal, and it may not be this, but if your goal is to generate passive income, where an asset generates you income so you don't have to work, and I like that type of income, then having an investment that's negatively geared the whole way along is not going to help you achieve that objective. So surplus cash flow is something that's really important.